start with the basics, the caramel apple jalousie. Now, this is a basic apple strudel using puff pastry. And I start with 2 cups of tart apples, like a Granny Smith apple, peeled and cut into thin slices. Now, to add that caramel flavor, it takes 2 ingredients. A little light brown sugar, a 1/4 cup, and 1/3 of a cup of crushed toffee bits. Just a little bit of cinnamon, a 1/4 teaspoon. I'll just give this a little stir and let the apples sit. So while that's sitting, I can prepare the pastry. So this particular strudel is made using puff pastry. You can use, of course, a store-bought puff pastry, but make sure you're using a good quality brand that, of course, is butter-based. I'll just flour my work surface. And so I'm gonna roll this out first in a square, but then cut that into 2 rectangles, one for the top layer and one for the bottom. It's important when rolling puff pastry that you roll it directly from the fridge. It's layered with almost 1,000 sheets of butter. And so you wanna keep that butter cold so that the pastry bakes up nice and flaky. And I like to use a pastry wheel to make precise cuts. So first, I'll trim off the edges. Now I need to cut 2 rectangles, both that are 10 inches long, but one that's 4 inches wide for the bottom and the other 4.5 inches wide for the top. And I'll place the smaller one on the bottom. And then with the little piece that's extra, I'll cut this into 1/2-inch strips. There we go. The first step is to brush the entire base with egg wash. That'll help the other pieces of puff pastry stick to it. And I'm gonna build a frame to hold in the apples, because this is a small tart, but I wanna pack it full of the apples. Now I'll brush these with the egg wash as well, and then just drop in the apple filling, taking care to keep them within that puff pastry frame. And that final sprinkle of the toffee bits. So now the last step is to add the top layer to the strudel. And what I want to do is make little slits in it to let steam escape as the apples cook down. And without cutting through the pastry altogether, I'll just make notches all the way through. But it now gives the pastry a little more stretch to it so that it can lift up and over that apple filling. And you can stretch it to put it into place and adhere it onto that puff pastry bottom. Give it a good press at the sides, and then a final brushing with egg wash on top to add shine and a nice even browning. And for that final little touch, a sprinkle of turbinado sugar. Puff pastry takes a hot oven, so I've preheated it to 400 degrees, and I let this bake first for 10 minutes. Then I turn down the oven to 375, let it go for another 20 to 25 until you see the bubbling juices from the apples and a nice even color on the puff pastry. Oh, beautiful. You can smell the toffee bits and the cinnamon in there. And I like to let this cool a little bit before I slice it, but as a whole, it does present beautifully.